Welcome back to another episode of Off Hours with Bourbon Lens. This is Jake Llewellyn along with Jake Ireland, and we are excited to be joined with probably a man that's got faster fingers than most of us and is on the phone more than most of us, Ian Rapoport. And so, Ian, thank you so much for joining this episode of Off Hours with Bourbon Lens.
Thank you for having me. I apologize in advance if I have to leave and take a phone call during this. Hopefully I will, because that'll mean I'm getting information. Otherwise, it'll just be 45 minutes of me being useless and not getting anything.
Oh, well, there's got to be a lull in the day at some point, right?
I mean, generally there isn't. Like this time of year when I spend a lot of my days calling, a lot of people who are involved in draft meetings and trying to figure out what's going to happen in a couple of weeks and map it all out and all of that. What does generally happen is everyone's in meetings at the same time. So you call a bunch of people, nobody calls you back, and then they all call back at the same time. So like during the season, from 4 to 7 on Friday is a very popular time to call me because everyone's driving home.
Gotcha.
So I basically, everyone misses my call during the day, and then everyone calls me at the same time between 4 and 7 as they're all driving home at the same time.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Ian, with that, of kind of always having to be on and knowing that 4 to 7 window, is really when you feel like you're going to be the most busy. Do you know now to sort of okay, from that window on a Friday night, we are not going to do anything, as far as I'm going to make sure that I'm available by the phone, I'm ready to take calls and sort of schedule around it? Or is it I'm going to go with my day and do what I got to do. And if it comes in, great, I'll stop, pick up the phone, or, how's that sort of work?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I try extremely hard to be as normal as possible. And, I got 2 boys. I go to as many of their events as I can. It ends up being, almost all of them when I'm in town. Mm. And, if I have to stand on the sideline, and I'm not, for mostly schedule reasons, I don't coach them.
Yeah.
Mostly I like to hang out and watch, honestly. So, I'm always there. But if I have to be in the background dealing with a phone call or dealing with some news, but also watching, I'll do that. And then let's say Saturdays during the football season, I'm usually at a flag football game. So I'll sit there in my chair with a computer, making calls and writing, but also watching. And it's not, perfect, but it beats the alternative, which is me not being able to be there. So there's in, my line of work and kind of how I do it, there's always multitasking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things, I just feel like in your all's job, you never know when the news is going to come. So it's you can't really prioritize the news because it's going to break the way it breaks. And so from a family perspective, that's one of the things that I find really fascinating with people in the sports world, because especially in the busy times, spring and fall, you never know what's going to happen. Someone gets injured. You got to go figure out where you're going to pick up the next person to backfill, or who you're going to draft, who you're going to pick up in free agency. So how do you balance that out? Because, you got a lot of stuff that can break real quick for 9, 10 months out of the year.
Yeah. I mean, that's always a constant battle. And, there's sometimes, but not that many times, where I will be all right, this news is coming. Let's say it's a big contract or a big trade. One of the things that I think has helped is when something major is happening, something I have to monitor, someone's going to text me a thumbs up, and then the trade is good to go, or something, or this contract's done, just waiting on reading the final language. Someone is going to call me and say, go. When it happens, I will remove myself from whatever I'm doing. It's dinner, or, I'm just hanging out with the boys and my wife or something. I'm not helpful or even really present if I'm dealing with something on my phone or on my computer or whatever. So that's when it gets annoying and not helpful. So I'll just remove myself, go to my desk and sit there with my finger on the button, basically. All other times, if it's dealing with really news, something that will be hey, just traded for this guy. We just signed this guy. This contract is done. It's usually pretty fast. So I'll be hold on a second. Let me deal with this. I'll deal with it. And then, usually hit send on a tweet, maybe a follow, and then you're back to normal.
Yeah.
So I, again, try very hard to be to do everything that I would otherwise do, while knowing that at any moment I could be like, you know what, give me just 1 second, got to deal with this, be right back. Because it's small, quick windows. But, the other option would be sort of like putting down my phone. And that's actually way more stressful.
Yeah.
Because, and you miss things. At least if I'm holding it, I can be like, I got this. Give me a second. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. Now the question comes, what happens when you're out with your wife? It's date night and, everything's going good, and that comes through. Like, do you still feel that pressure? You got to keep going through, or what's that look like?
Yeah. I mean, we've been together for 17 years.
Yeah.
She knows my world. She knows my job probably as well as anyone. Really two different things that can happen. There is someone who's a source, good source, valued person, calls me and they're just trying to chit chat. And like, hey, did you hear about this? Like, people, because of what I do, people call me for gossip all the time, like to share or to seek out, like, hey, what do you hear on this guy? Like, people love gossip and I love gossip and they know my deep, deep love for that. So those folks, like if I was let's say I was out to dinner with my wife, the only time she'll sort of like get mad at me for two different things. One is just kind of chatting on the phone with no end or reason, just like chit chatting when I should be talking to her. Like, that's the kind of thing where I'm like, hey man, I'm with my wife. You mind if I call you in a couple hours? And usually it's like, cool, or I'll call you tomorrow, whatever. The other thing is when like we're trying to talk and I'm kind of like mindlessly scrolling through my phone, like Twitter, like if I have to look for something on Twitter, like as she will kindly remind me, I've already been beat. So it's actually not helpful. And it just means that I'm not paying attention to whatever else is going on. So like those are the kinds of things I try to limit. But if it's real, if it's like something important, like she knows, like if I get up from the table, like something important is going on.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I found that to be like super interesting because it's like news waits for nobody. Like in that, like that's like the old saying, right? And so I find it to be very interesting, like how you balance that. And then you have, kids and all of those things. But we've talked enough about work. Let's talk about a little bit what you do in your downtime. So I would say you get maybe 2 months a year, if that, like when it's slower.
Yeah, but there are, like this is a job, like I've been doing this job for 12 years and, I see myself doing it for a lot longer. And I like my job a lot. And so what I've been able to do is find like pockets of time where, you're never quite off in that, like put the phone away. Yeah. But I got some good colleagues and we sort of take turns filling for each other essentially, basically being on call. So like week after the Super Bowl, for a couple days after free agency, the week after the draft, we always go to the Kentucky Derby. Like, and then, once the draft ends, then it's like, it gets much more quiet. And then mid-June to mid-July is basically off. Yeah. But like, those like week-long or 5-day-long pockets of like, I'm going to go skiing and other people, and if stuff comes in, I pass along to the other people, to my colleagues and say, hey, I got this tip, deal with this. Like we'll both report it if it happens. Like those have been really valuable in keeping me sane essentially and like sort of paving the way for me doing this for a while.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I'd figure. Like if you're on all the time, you're going to burnout's real in any job. So like having a good, team of people around you has to be super important. Like I've met Garofalo, as I say his last name, Mike.
He's a big bourbon guy.
Yeah. So I met him through Champ and he came down to Champ Camp.
Champ guy.
Yeah. And, it was really cool just to meet him and pick his brain when we were down there. And so it's like, he was saying the same thing, like having the team around him is nice. Cause can't be awake all the time for when things happen.
Yeah. And like, there's just too much.
Yeah.
And so you learn, like any team, you learn what the strengths and weaknesses are. And if there's something where like someone else has a great relationship with the team, I'll just be like, hey, you got a better chance of getting this one than I do. So I'm going to pass this along and, maybe we could do it together. Like that happens a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. So when you think about you, big bourbon guy, and I know we've heard you're a big bourbon guy, like what got you into the brown spirits? And I'm going to have to ask you about the Kentucky Derby here in a little bit, cause I live in Louisville and big Derby guy too.
You can give me restaurant recommendations. We're actually making reservations.
There we go. I got
tonight. So when I was in college, I was a lightweight rower. It's a sport at Columbia. It was a varsity sport. I was not very good. My team was very good. I was not. But it's a weigh in. It's kind of like wrestling. And so you have to be around a certain weight. And so I would always drink vodka and Diet Coke, because that would be a way of, drinking, but also, and like having fun, but also like weight wise being responsible. Get out of college, can't really order vodka and Diet Coke at a bar or restaurant. I drink beer, so I would always drink beer, but it's like, I never had people would say, what drink do you want? I'm like, I don't know. I don't really have one. So I kind of went about being like, what can I drink? And so somebody made the recommendation that I should start drinking bourbon. I tried scotch, didn't love it. Well, kind of like, I don't know, didn't love it. And I started drinking bourbon. So I would pour myself like, a small glass with a bunch of ice, tried it with water. And I just really just pour it in a glass and drink it. That's the way I like it. So that's how I do. I would say most nights have a, small glass of bourbon, a couple sips before bed. It's very relaxing.
Yep.
And then, it took a little bit, but start to really like it and really appreciate it. And I'm much more of an amateur as opposed to a, sort of professional bourbon drinker, like, because of the way I am. Like, I am not great at like identifying like, okay, I can, pick out this flavor or this whatever. I'm not great at that, which is frustrating because I know what I like, but I'm never quite sure why I like it. But I've tried to expand my palate as much as possible. And we have a lot of bottles. And we also have a neighbor who is very interested as well. So he will, be like, hey, got the new mic drop, left one on your doorstep, like that. So
nice.
I like drinking it. I like the bourbon world. By no means an expert, but I do enjoy it.
Oh, see that? I feel like your neighbor is the reason why the bourbon community is one of the greatest communities of people. Like you find a friend that you like it, and then you're bottle swapping, and they're picking stuff up for you when it's available, and then you're having a conversation over a cocktail or over a neat pour, and you're just enjoying the evening. Like,
well, and it goes the other way too, though. Like, we went to Louisville last year, and we were like, hey, I heard there's going to be a Colonel Taylor pop-up. Right? And he's like, hey, go grab me like 4 bottles. And we ended up getting the too late, and everything was sold out in like 30 minutes. But I mean, that's like, the expectation is like, hey, like,
yeah,
come on,
yeah,
look your neighbor up. It's great though. The other fun thing is, so during, we kind of like, we moved in like 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, kind of just starting to get to know him. He mentions he likes bourbon. And I'm like, yeah, I've just started drinking bourbon. And he's like, what do you like? And I kind of mentioned some stuff without really knowing. He's like, what about rye? I'm like, nah, I don't really love rye, And he's like, we should do a taste test. So we're like, okay. So we got like 6 bottles, blind taste test, had his wife keep score of what everything was, couple bourbons, couple ryes. My wife and then like you say like this is my best, and my wife and I both picked rye as the one we liked. The rye is the one we like best, and we're like, okay, like that's these are the kinds of bourbon experiences that I appreciate.
Oh yeah, I mean,
there you go.
I mean, does it get any better, Jake? Like having a couple buddies like just pour blind, and then you have no clue what's in it, and you like what you like at that point versus saying like, I'm looking for tasting.
I feel
notes.
like in the same thing, when I got into bourbon, it was like you had all these people around you who knew all the taste profiles and they knew everything there was about it. And it was like, wow, this is intimidating. And, you're like, how am I supposed to figure this out? At the end of the day, it's like, I like this. It tastes good. Like it's pretty simple. And it's like, I like that one. I don't like that one. And, you start to understand a little more about the back end of it when it comes to why you like it. And it's like, oh, it's a little bit more rye, or it's a little bit more wheat, or it's whatever the mash bill is, that sort of gives it away a little bit. But I feel like the same thing we tried with off hours, just like People like to drink it neat. People like to drink it on the rocks and in a cocktail. Like, drink it however you want to, and don't let anybody tell you that you're wrong for doing it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't quite understand why people will pour a little bit of water in it and drink it. I don't understand that. I understand some people do it, but that makes no sense to me. But everything else, I'm on board with you.
Yeah, there's a technical reason for that, and then some people that's how their dad did it, so that's how they drink it.
What's the technical reason for that?
So the technical reason, when you add water to the bourbon, the molecules change, so you get different flavor profiles, which allows you to taste different components as well as change the oil and the texture of the whiskey, so it coats your palate differently.
Interesting.
Yeah. Not that I'm a bourbon nerd or anything.
Not at all.
The crazy thing is 5 years ago when we started this podcast, being a Kentuckian, I had maybe bought 2 bottles of bourbon in my entire life. One was when I was 21 and it was Weller 12 at a Rite Aid, which you can't do anymore. So don't go to Rite Aids and try to find Weller 12.
Can't drink it or you can't buy it?
Can't buy it. I can drink it because I have a bottle, but can't buy it.
Not a Rite Aid. Yeah.
Not a Rite Aid. Not for $23.99 either. And so, I bought that in a bottle of Kentucky Tavern. So up until that point, like, I hadn't really enjoyed it. And my buddy just started feeding me liquid. And next thing you know, it's like you get ballsy enough to enter a competition, which I did. And then everything kind of takes off when you make to the finals. And competition's good. Like, I like competition. I played football. Of course I like competition. And I want to be the best. Who doesn't want to be the best at whatever they do? And as men, don't we want to be the best drinker? That should be an award, like the best drinker.
I mean, I feel like I'd be in the running.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
And the prerequisite is just, can you drink to have fun? And that's all that matters. It's not about being the best drinker that you can drink the most. Are you having the most fun while you're having your beverage?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Ian, do you feel like you can, because you're sort of always on call, do you feel like you can go out and have a big night with the guys or anything and know that there might be, a story that breaks and you're like, oh man, I gotta be on Twitter, or I gotta be on one of these channels that, after the influence of bourbon a little bit?
I mean, I'm 43 years old, which is not old, but like, there's not that many nights where I go out and I'm like unable to function as a human. I don't know if that's, I mean, there's a couple truths that I have for my job. One of them is anything I do could end up on Twitter, Instagram, on a podcast, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, I'm pretty public. I'm pretty transparent. I go out and do things. I go out and do fun things. And I understand kind of my role in society. People know who I am. So, rarely do I just get to a point where I would like embarrass myself.
Sure.
And I don't think I would be like that anyway if I had a different job, but just because of the way things are, sorry, I'm watching the Mets game as I talk to you guys. Because of the way things are, I don't really get like that anyway. But like, even if I go out and have like a big night, or like the Christian McCaffrey trade happened, I was at basically like a charity poker event. And like I'd had a beer or two, nothing crazy, but like, was not sitting on my couch drinking water. And McCaffrey broke at 11:30 at night.
Yeah.
I was on TV at 12:08 a.m.
That's crazy.
Just, that's one of those things where like, and actually like I was talking to a lot of people involved in that trade at like 10:30, and at 11, everyone stopped responding. And I literally was like, I got to go. I'm going to go home, because I knew something. Because when people are doing the deal, that's when everyone puts their phones down. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, this is obviously about to happen, because now no one's responding. So I got to go home and be ready. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And that trade changed the course of the entire NFL season last year.
Sure did. One of the best trades I can remember.
Yeah. I mean, John Lynch has done a lot of really good things since he took over as GM out there.
Sure has.
Ian, how old are you? You mentioned you have 2 boys. How old are they?
I have an 8-year-old and I have an almost 10-year-old.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
I look forward to those.
What do
days.
they think of? What do they think of your job?
I think they get a kick out of it. It's weird though, because like they don't watch me a lot. Like they will watch sports some, but mostly they like funny cartoons.
Fair enough.
And I think they know. Obviously, they know I'm on TV. They also know that like if I'm here doing this, or if like I'm in front of the camera, or I'm on like a FaceTime with the Pat McAfee show, like if they walk in, they're probably getting on. So like they come into my office, it kind of like will look to catch my eye, and I'll either be like have a chair right kind of off camera, I'll be like sit, or if it's like a lighthearted moment, it'll like come in the shot, or like they don't come in and go like they know.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here, even if my door's not locked, like I might be on air.
Yeah.
They also know that, and this is kind of happening as they're getting a little bit older. Their friends know what I do. And so like, for the first time a couple weeks ago, my oldest Max comes home and goes, all my friends want to know what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers. I'm like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first time that it happened. Which is actually a really good thing, because I need to make sure he knows what off the record means. And if he hears something, with his friends.
Yeah.
Right.
And now we wait for the Aaron Rodgers news to break, whatever that looks like. Yeah, and that was one of the things I was wondering, like, can they hear you around the house? And so if they pick stuff up, like, are they taking it to their like, their elementary school friends, or their flag football game, and just be like, yo, I heard Dad over hearing that the Ravens traded whoever or Lamar to San Diego for Justin Herbert. Like if something crazy like that would ever happen. And so I went far-fetched there, guys. So it's nothing like that's what I would always wonder that.
No, I mean, it's actually a good question. And like, I am pretty transparent, and we talk about a lot of things with them, like about everything.
Yeah.
Right. We're very honest, and like, obviously they're kids, but we talk about a lot of real life stuff, and, real stuff. And then also like this stuff, which like, this is my job. This is important. Like if you hear something and it's private, you can't share it. Or if like, like when I was doing, Tailgate Takedown with the Food Network.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a secret, and Max was home from school, and so like walks into my room and basically is on like the other side of the Zoom, so basically like right here. And it was like a very fun, lighthearted moment where he was like, my dad's going to be on Tailgate Takedown, and McAfee, like, they all talked about it, but also like he was not supposed to say that. It was supposed to be a secret, and we had to be like, hey, like, that was funny. People liked it, but that was a secret. So in the future, like, here's how to deal with that. Here's how to know. If you're going to say anything publicly, you got to ask me first. Like, these are all the conversations we had.
Yeah. No, and Tailgate Takedown was a good show. I like that.
Thank you. It was so fun. It was so fun.
I hope that the food looked good. I mean, it looked good on camera, so I don't know if it tasted as good as it looked.
It was great.
That's awesome.
I actually like I mean, I know this is like a bourbon, not food discussion, but like, I feel like because of the rampant sharing of recipes and techniques on Instagram and TikTok, the quality of food making has skyrocketed dramatically in our world.
100%.
And so like, there's so many like amateur chefs who are awesome.
Yeah.
And I was like, I told him, I was like, I would love to do the show. It was like my honor. It was so much fun, but I'm not doing it unless I get to really try the food. And they're like, you will get to eat. I'm like, all right, we're good.
Well, yeah. And Vince and Sonny looked like they were having a hell of a time doing that show.
And they were so awesome. Like they were like, and that was one of the, the vibe. It's like a team. Like you sort of vibe off your captains. Like they were like the sort of leaders of the show, and they enjoyed every minute of it. And so did we. It's great.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, we talk about food on pretty much every one of these episodes because I get hungry when we talk about bourbon, and then I just want to eat.
Ian, what do you think, just over the last, you said 12 years you've been there with the NFL Network, just the evolution of technology over those, like how your job has evolved in sort of how quickly news gets out there and sort of what it was coming up, where it is nowadays in Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and you name it. Like, just how has that changed your life, I guess, as far as like, okay, life used to be me being on air, I was doing X, Y, and Z, and, I had some more time, to now like that phone is in your hand at all times.
Well, I think for me, like since I've been doing this, we've always had Twitter and news has always been instant. What has changed now is not nobody, but rarely does anyone wait for anything big anymore. Like you used to be able to like, all right, I'm going to wait to report this and I'll report it all in the newspaper, or I'll report it in the story, or I'll wait till the trade is done. Like nobody waits for anything anymore. It's like have a morsel, and it's true. Like unless you're going to literally screw up the deal, which I'm very cognizant of, and I do not want to happen, you can almost not wait anymore because everyone reports anything. And if it's not you, it's going to be something else. And I will, have that conversation with sources. Be like, look, I know about this. If I know about it, other people know about it. Like it's going to be public. Everything is public.
Yeah.
So I think the sort of incremental reporting has been kind of a change. The other thing is, for me, I got my camera right here. I got my monitor. And obviously this is where I do a lot of my broadcasting. If something happened and I'm on a ski trip, I don't know, like you can put up your phone, you can go on FaceTime or Zoom. It can look pretty good and you could be on TV.
Yeah.
That was not the case. Like because of COVID a little bit, it sort of made it okay to broadcast literally where you are. One, made it easier because you can go on air whenever you want. On the other hand, you have to be ready to go on air at all times.
Yeah.
I would never grow a beard like you. No offense. But if I did, I would have to, I have to shave. I have to be clean shaven all the time.
Right.
Could go on air at any moment.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, that's one of the things I always, have wondered, like watching hits on TV. Does someone come in and help you like make sure your aesthetics are good, or do they give you tips and tricks on that, like from a background perspective?
They did it all.
Oh,
yeah,
did they?
We had our set designer who does like our Super Bowl sets and like our sets in the network came and designed my office as if it was my office, which it actually is my office.
Wow.
I got, like helmets and props and footballs and pictures, and I got pool balls. And none of that stuff is mine. And so like it's funny, like they're like, hey, like I wrote a book. I'd love to send it to you. I'm like, cool, I won't read it. But I will put it on my backdrop and kind of update it. I read things on Kindle, so I will happily read it there. But if you send me the book, I won't read that, but I will happily display it on TV for all to see.
I got to get you a bottle of off hours back there now. Jeez.
There you go. Send it.
Yeah. Beautiful. Easy enough.
He's looking. He's like, what do I got back there right now?
What am I going to move to the side? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, that was one of my, we did like Zoom etiquette at my old company. It was a Fortune 50 company. And like, I had bourbon bottles behind me and they were like, yeah, they got to go. And I'm like, oh, y'all are no fun. Like, this is a part of who I am. Like, let me have fun.
Yeah, I don't know that would be okay for me. Although TV kind of cuts off on the second shelf, so maybe on the third shelf would be okay.
Yeah, exactly. For when you're doing other things that are more fun,
like this.
Yeah. And then the other question I had for you, because I find it oddly fascinating how Pat McAfee quit punting and kicking off to literally become this media conglomerate that he has. Like, what's that like interacting with someone who has all the experience and been an NFL player and now is turned into this media personality who's kind of larger in life, and he interacts like with you and like the guys on crew, like seem like y'all are just boys hanging out for, the 20-minute hit.
I mean, that's what it feels like. Like it's all technically work, but like appearances on the McAfee show are fun.
Yeah.
Like I legitimately enjoy myself. Like it feels like I'm hanging out with my buddies. And talking to Pat, that's what it feels like too. And I guess, that's sort of why the show is so good.
Mm-hmm.
You really feel like you are on the couch watching a game, maybe having a drink with a bunch of your buddies. Yeah. So it's like he asked me to fill in and host for a day, earlier this off season. And when I saw, I had met maybe like the guys on the show maybe once or twice, but I hadn't met them in a while. And I walked into his studio and it was like I was seeing my friends again. Oh, hey, it's like, that's kind of what it's like. And, he's found the magic formula, which is create an environment where we're all just hanging out in the bar talking sports.
Yeah.
Like on the network, it's obviously a different vibe. But there are hosts who you feel like that with, or like if ever on air with Mike Garafolo, Tom Pelissero, a couple others, like people are always like, oh, you guys seem like you're having fun. I'm like, we are having fun.
Yeah.
That's three guys talking about sports. Like that's the good stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's what like a shared drink or a shared conversation, like is that like, if you can create that in the work environment, like all the better. Right. So, work doesn't feel so much like work.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. So I guess my one work question for you, even though we've talked about work quite a bit, is like, what's been your like most memorable like moment from a behind the scenes? Like this is how it happened and we were doing X, Y, and Z and this is when it broke, or what was the biggest piece of news that you've broken?
It's funny because like I try to think about this sometimes and I can almost not remember the stories I broke. I'll tell you about all the losses. Those are not as fun.
Yeah.
But the ones I break, it's hard to remember. A couple come to mind. So when I was starting at the network, I've been there a year and, they kind of had said, we'd like to make you our insider. I was a field reporter at the time. And they were like, we're going to, have you come to LA for the day after the season, which we used to call Black Monday when coaches got fired. And they're like, we've not broken one in a couple of years. We want to see if you can break one. And I ended up breaking Lovie Smith getting fired, which, was always weird to me because he's a great guy.
Yeah.
And that moment for me was great. And it was a guy losing his job. Like, that's such a weird dichotomy. But that was kind of the moment where I was like, okay, like maybe I can really do this.
Yeah.
So that was one that always stands out. A fun one was, 3 or 4 years ago, I'm making draft calls, talking to executives and, just a regular day in the middle of April. And someone says to me like, hey, are you on this Gronk stuff? Like, what do you mean? Like this Gronk stuff? I'm like, what do you mean? And then at this point, Gronk was retired. And they're like, well, Gronk getting traded to the Bucks. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, probably should make some calls. I'm like, oh my God. So from that tip to reporting that Gronk had informed the Patriots that he would only get traded to the Bucks, and the fact that the teams were in talks to make it happen was 6 months. I talked to 3 people directly involved. Everyone answered right away, and I ended up reporting it. But I went from like 0 to, oh my God, Gronk is getting traded in 6 months. It was incredible.
That's crazy. Yeah, and he was off dancing with Shaq on his whatever the hell they were doing down in Miami, like a couple weeks before that. Man, no, that those are the things that are fun. Like just like hearing those stories, because not everyone knows like how they come together, and it's a network of relationships. And how would you say that you've done that, built those relationships over time? Because one of the things we talked about with a guest previously was, it's hard as we get to become adults, making those connections and friendships, especially in this virtual world. Like, how have you been able to, really lean in, build those relationships with, your sources and your teams over the time?
It has taken a lot. It's taken a lot of years, a lot of trips. Combine is incredible for that. Like, I will basically go out at the combine and stay out till 3:30 or 4 every single night. Because that's when people are out and that's when you meet people.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of sources that, like last year, maybe the best source I had in all of free agency, who directly led to like 4 major stories, I met at 2:30 in the morning at the combine.
At St. Elmo's?
So it was like those kinds of things. Staying out is like important. Being available is important.
Yeah.
I go to 20 training camps a year.
Wow.
I go to when I used to do Thursday Night Football, I would basically get to a town and meet everyone I possibly could with both teams that were there. Like just out meeting people, getting phone numbers, reaching out to them when you don't need them. That's important too. Like it's like dating. It's just, you got to cast a wide net and, start from the bottom. And, it probably took me 5 or 6 years to reach a point where I felt like I had a good base of relationships.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Has that allowed you, as you've built more sources, as you've built your relationships and your team around you, allowed you to take a step back a little bit more to enjoy other, like your hobbies? And obviously you mentioned going to your kids' sporting events and still obviously being on, but taking a step away. Is there still stuff or stuff now that you are capable of doing that, you couldn't do before when you didn't have the team and the resources around you?
Not really. Because it's always, it's basically a constant conversation with about 1,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are always new coaches and there are always new executives and new agents and just people you want to meet. So like, it's funny. It's like you end up taking things from some of the people you've covered, you hear all the time, right? Like when I covered Alabama, Nick Saban would always say, "You've never arrived. Never arrived." And that's one of the things that stuck with me. And it's really true because like, God forbid you get to a point where you're like, woohoo, I'm like breaking all the stories. Like you'll get woken up very quickly, or like, man, I know everyone. This is great. Like there's always more people to meet, always more relationships to build, always more news to break.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
There's always a new scout. There's always a new agent, right? And you never know when they could be your best bud. Yeah. I don't know if it was big news, but when my buddy, former teammate, Corey Peters retired, I was scrolling through and saw that kind of break on a couple people's Twitters last week. So, 13 years, never thought that guy would play 13 years in the NFL, but he did. It's pretty cool.
Great guy.
Oh,
good pro.
Oh, just phenomenal dude. He's got his master's in teaching, which a lot of people don't realize. So he's probably gonna go teach. And I was giving him a bunch of crap about that via text. I was like, you going to teach or coach football at your alma mater here in Louisville? He's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm like, just go retire, buddy. Have fun. So one quick question. I'm a Broncos fan. I won't tell you how I got there. Basically, I lost a bet when I was 7 and I had to renounce my fandom to the Packers and became a Broncos fan when they won the Super Bowl back-to-back years. What's the outlook? What do you think? You think Sean Payton's a good fit for Denver?
I think necessary fit.
Yeah.
Because, Denver, I think has got some good players. We'll see what Russell Wilson plays like this year. Either he'll bounce back and be the Russell Wilson of old, or he just won't, and then it'll be about finding an exit strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's necessary. That whole place needs a culture change. They have a new owner now.
Yep.
That seems really, really positive. But you need someone to set the culture and be like, this is how you work.
Mm-hmm.
How you win.
Yeah.
And Sean Payton does not care about offending you. Does not care.
Yeah.
Does not care about pushing too hard. He is just about winning. And, I think that is something that is necessary and will certainly help.
Well, that's what I was thinking. And I guess it showed a little bit that Russ showed up a little early to minicamp or whatever, voluntary workouts. You better. That's awesome. Awesome. Well, Ian, it's been great just talking life, talking sports, talking everything with you all, or with you today. And we really appreciate the time. We know it's the busy time of the year for you. Where can everybody just, if they don't follow you already, where can people find you on social media so they can catch the latest breaking NFL news?
I mean, I hope they would be following already, but at Rap Sheet is the Twitter and the Instagram and the TikTok, which I'm not very good at, but hopefully I'm getting better at. And on NFL Network, all the time on NFL Network, which is great.
There we go. So make sure you're following him for all the late breaking news in the NFL, because there's a lot and there'll be more to come here shortly. As always, thank you all for listening to this episode of Off Hours with Bourbon Lens. You can find out more about Off Hours at Drink Off Hours, and you can find out more about Bourbon Lens at Bourbon Lens on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And until next time, cheers.